Hi there, Xeonexis coming in. And today I'm going to be talking about some basic positioning and maneuvers which can be useful especially for players in the low rank. But before we tackle about positioning, let us first understand how terrain works. First we have the open sea, and then we have the open ground, we have the forest, we have the high ground, the low ground, and this ramp or which can be called a choke point. Next, let us understand how a high ground and low ground works. So guys, it's very simple. Units on the high ground can see units on the low ground, but units on the low ground cannot see units on the high ground. The only thing that makes the low ground unit see what is on the high ground is if it fires on the unit, just like this. As you can see, my sniper cannot see the hammer which is above the high ground, but when the hammer fired at my sniper, then the hammer reveals himself to the sniper. On special cases such as a chameleon, the units on the high ground will not be revealed. However, it will only reveal a fog created by the chameleon, just like this. First, the jaguar fires on the hammer below and then fully reveals himself. However, when the chameleon was turned on, the only thing that the hammer can see above was the fog. Therefore, the hammer has to go up and find the jaguar personally in order to attack. Next is the sea. So it's actually quite different from the land. So the sea is mainly clear and open terrain, and there are only two things to consider, which is going to be the cannons or torpedoes. So Vikings have cannons and torpedoes while alligators has only anti-air and cannons. So guys, the only thing that you really need to consider when you're engaging in the sea is that the units should be moving in this kind of formation, so when they see the enemy, all of them will be able to fire and do more damage at once. Next is land positioning. So land positioning is actually very different compared to the sea. It's because there are a lot of things to consider, let it be the high ground, low ground, the range of units and unit compositions, and more. However, this is your typical JCP formation, which has its own advantages and disadvantages. The advantages being one, it's in the high ground, overlooking a choke point or a ramp, which, if the enemy passes through, will most likely get annihilated. It's because the mammoths and the jaguars both can fire at the ramp. However, just like its advantages, this thing also has its own disadvantages. Like, for example, the jaguars, or basically the units, are all clumped together near. So, if there was a torrent, a Thor, or even a Zeus, then they could easily destroy this army. It's because they are too close to each other. We also need to consider splash damage. A Zeus has a very wide splash damage, which means if it fires at one of these jaguars, the jaguars beside it will also get damaged. Therefore, one Zeus will effectively damage three jaguars, and that's not good. However, for a formation, for example, hammers and a couple of assaults, then this formation is good. It's because hammers and assaults have a very small splash damage. The most common mistake people often do is not scouting ahead before attacking the enemy. If you do not know where the enemy's units are, then you do not know how to position yourself properly. For example, this Confederation player did not scout my units or did not scout the high ground. Therefore, he did not know that I had a JCP waiting on the high ground. His units were also passing on a choke points. So guys, beware of choke points. Choke points are those points in the map where it forces all your units to go near or clump together just to move to another terrain. Before moving through one, you wanna make sure that you have already scouted the other side and made sure that no enemy is waiting for your army. It's because things like this can happen, which can often turn the tide of games and cause you to lose. Another thing I keep in mind when I attack the enemy army or the enemy base in general is to make sure that I have this formation called the concave. So basically, it goes like this. It's like all your units are lined up and they can attack everything in front. All of them can attack at the same time. So as you can see, the jaguars have lined up perfectly, therefore all of them can attack all the buildings at the same time. If you compare it to the ones when they were moving, you can see that some of my Jaguars were able to fire at the enemy, while some others were still managing to find their positions just to fire at the enemy. Another tip you can learn here is that the enemy's army is at its weakest usually when it is moving. It's because the units are not positioned properly. Therefore, you need to find a point where the enemy has the least range or least units that can attack you and attack from that angle. And that's it for this video. Guys, I know that I haven't covered a lot of things because this topic is actually very broad. However, my goal here is just to tell you the basic of positioning and terrain as well as vision. Because you need to learn them yourselves, guys. This is where experience and play comes in. The more you experience and the more you play, the more you will learn, alright? The important thing is you learn the basics, and this should be more than enough for you to win your battles. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. Xeonexis over and out.